Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, New York City, we have Meagan Tenety. She's the lead ESG advisory with Nasdaq, and we're going to take a look at ESG is certainly being integrated into the investment decision-making process and how she's helping corporates manage that process. It's great to meet with you, Meagan. And when you advise corporates and they're struggling to convince their leadership to invest in an ESG program, how would you help them along with that process?
You know, first and foremost, what we're seeing is that a lot of leadership is still thinking that ESG is a bit of a trend, and we're seeing that it just isn't. There are assets that are moving towards sustainable investments, you know, to the tune of $31 trillion. So it's really important, and if you're not investing in ESG, you're really leaving money on the table. I think secondly, what investors are really looking for is they're really looking to evaluate the leadership at these companies. And so they want to know, is the leadership taking into account all the different risk factors that are really important to their company? And they're making decisions based off of that.
All right, now what are some of the ways that investors are using ESG in their decision-making process?
First and foremost, they're looking at it as ROI. They want a return on their investment. And so every investor is looking at it differently. It comes at different parts of the decision-making process. For some investors, it's cost of capital. You have a really strong ESG program, it's really going to lower that cost of capital. For other investors, it's a little bit of a stop-go. It says to them, you know, they're taking ESG into account, and that means that we're going to go ahead and make an investment here. Or they're saying they're not really doing a great job at ESG. We're going to wait until they start to really take on those risk factors before we move ahead with this investment.
All right, now the obvious question is many companies, they want to get credit for the work that they're doing in ESG that they're already doing.
Absolutely.
How would you advise them to proceed?
You know, first and foremost, I think it's very important to understand the entire landscape. There are so many different players in the field, and you really need to have a strategy to really start to understand who the players are. You need to know who the indices are. You need to understand who the rating agencies are. You need to really start to understand all of the different factors that are really inside this ESG universe. And then from there, you have to come up with a strategy to really start to communicate the ways that you are investing in ESG. So you need to put it in your CSR report. You need to come up with a strategy of the way that you're going to talk about it in your proxy statement. You need to come up with a strategy for how you're putting this information on the website. So whether that's metrics, discussion and analysis, all of these things need to come into a complete strategy so that investors can really start to understand who you are.
All right, great insight. Thanks so much for joining us at MarketSite.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.